When it comes to analysing fear, we often focus on aesthetics and how they can effectively prey on our survival instincts, like marvelling at demonic teeth or menacing claws that invoke our flight or fight response. Or we look at the fundamental nature of exploiting more universal fears, like our fear of the unknown. But sometimes there exists a being who transcends our plights of existence, a being so powerful they no longer deal in the whims of survival or domination. Their existence is unquestionable, and so they spend their life deriving meaning in tearing apart the lives of others. Not because they have to, but simply because they want to. And this might be one of the most terrifying aspects of the Toymaker. He suffers the rare fate of a being so powerful they transcend the menial dynamics of everyday life. The Doctor himself summed it up perfectly when he described the Toymaker as an elemental force for evil with the power of a god, an immortal and all-powerful being who became so bored with the whims of thousands of millennia of pointless creations and destructions that he adopted a new form of amusement in playing games, and created a universe entirely out of his own vision, a hollow beneath the under-universe, where science is a game and all of us are toys, a world in which he can manipulate people and turn them into his playthings, setting up games against all manner of sentient beings, with stakes involving their lives, and rules often rigged in favour of the Toymaker, all in the name of adding to his toy collection. The Toymaker suffered a similar fate to the Eternals, a race whose power to manipulate matter and create structures out of thin air left them so bored of their godlike existence they found nothing more amusing than manipulating mortal life. Beings like these are too advanced to suffer the trivialities of everyday mortal life like survival, relationships or politics. They don't interfere with sentient life because they need to, they do it purely out of amusement, and nefarious glee in manipulating others and controlling them. For the Toymaker, this entertainment comes in the form of playing games with the highest of stakes, turning all those who lose into toys for all eternity. He even admitted that all those who call into his realm have no minds, and so he turns them into toys. His only real competition was the Doctor. He could be the Toymaker's one true perpetual opponent, but the fact that he turned all those he knew were no match for him into toys anyway shows how ruthlessly evil he truly is. He's a perfect metaphor for how power can corrupt our very essence. The Toymaker is so powerful he can no longer derive meaning from mere achievements or pleasures in his own life. Instead, he's forced to derive meaning from other people's. It's as though there's a semblance of envy in mortal existence for him, that people living lives with struggle and meaning tears him apart, so he takes it out on them, knowing full well his power eclipses theirs. He turns all of his mindless opponents into toys not because he has to, but because he wants to. It reminds me of the difference between someone who takes a life for revenge or impulse, and a serial killer who simply enjoys it. There's something fundamentally uncomfortable about someone who loves inflicting suffering on others for the sheer thrill of it, and the Toymaker is no exception. But what makes it even worse is there's virtually nothing the victim can do about it, because the Toymaker's only so-called weakness, that he's bound by the rules of the game, can't even be exploited. Even given the monumental stakes at play, the prospect of becoming a toy for all eternity, you can't even rely on a fair game against him. Take the encounter he had with the First Doctor and his companions Dodo and Steven. Almost every single minion he conjured to play against Dodo and Steven ended up cheating, whether it's the two clowns that wore see-through blindfolds during Blind Man's Bluff, or Cyril who omitted key rules from TARDIS hopscotch and poured slipping agent onto the tiles to try and knock them both off and fry them with electrical current. Even with his far superior knowledge and wit, he still isn't beyond resorting to cheating if it helps him win the game, even if it is third party via one of his own creations. And worse still, even if by some miracle you do manage to beat the Toymaker at his games, he still has one final ace up his sleeves. Just as he told the Doctor when he lost to him at a game of Trilogic, "I'm a bad loser, Doctor. I always destroy the Destroyer." The moment the Toymaker loses a game, his toy room vanishes, with everyone inside along with it. That means that if you exist within his reality as you beat him, you'll be destroyed along with his world, only for the immortal Toymaker to pop back into existence again and simply create another. He's even admitted before that he's grown bored of his toy room existing for too long, that he relishes the chance to lose and create a new one. That might just be more gamesmanship, but the fact that you're playing for your life, yet even in victory, the best you can hope for is saving yourselves from an eternity of torture as a toy through instant evaporation along with his world. Whilst the Toymaker, his greatest stake is his pride. Walking into the toy room is even worse than being tangled by a web. At least then you know you're doomed. The moment you enter the toy room, the best one can hope for is being wiped from existence after winning. Anything else means becoming a pawn in the Toymaker's games, as you exist for eternity is just another toy for him to get bored of in his toy room. I just hope the toys he collects over millennia are wiped from existence along with his world every time he loses, because the scene in the 2010 audio story Solitaire captures the horrifying reality of the Toymaker, as Charlotte tragically enters his toy room and picks up a doll, only for it to scream for help and warn her to escape before she's trapped in here forever. The same happens again moments later as a puppet mimes words out of her own mouth, a toy that turns out to be the Doctor himself. The knowledge of this scene completely changed how I perceived his cameo in the most recent Giggle episode, because as the camera pans across the toy room filled to the brim with toys, I can only wonder how many of these toys were once innocent beings who tragically crossed paths with the Toymaker and can now do nothing more than exist as hollow shells of their former past, condemned to an eternity of suffering. It's a testament to how cruel the Toymaker truly is. But for most people that enter the realm of the toy room, The prospect of win is no more real than the facade of escaping it, because he's mastered the fundamental nature of forcing people into a state of zugzwang, a term most notably denoted in chess when a player forces their opponent into a situation in which their obligation to make a move is a serious, often decisive disadvantage. The term perfectly encapsulates how the Toymaker destroys his opponents, because as he explained to the doctor when he asked what would happen if he refused to play his game, the Toymaker replied that if you refuse, you lose by default. He strategically forces people into situations where they're forced to move, because refusing means losing by default. But any move they make will inevitably weaken their position, because the Toymaker is so powerful. The most telling example of his master gamesmanship was how he sowed a simple seed on Earth, the giggle, which eventually blossomed into everyone believing they were right. When he told the doctor,
"So that they win. I made every opinion supreme. That's the game of the 21st century. They shout, and they type, and they cancel. So I fixed it. Now everybody wins.
And everyone loses."
the Toymaker forced almost everyone on Earth into his game, one that they had no choice but to play. But in every single person believing they were always right, everyone lost. Every move humanity made caused the situation within the game to worsen. Every decision they made on the basis of always being right weakened their position. It was the perfect game. The Toymaker forced Earth itself into a state of zugzwang. It was the same in TARDIS Hopscotch when Dodo and Stephen played against Cyril, a little schoolboy conjured by the Toymaker. Dodo and Stephen had to play in order to escape, but after Cyril had suspiciously let them both go first, they learned that when a player passed another player, they sent that player back to the start of the board, which theoretically meant that every move they made towards each other was one step closer to being sent back to the beginning, a huge and potentially decisive disadvantage. Having manipulated Dodo and Stephen to go first, Cyril, a pawn of the Toymaker, took complete control of the game in an instant. But if all that wasn't enough, his sheer power and cruelty, his willingness to bend the rules, his tactical genius in suffocating his opponents through zugzwang, there's one more element that the Doctor touched on that makes the Toymaker truly a stuff of nightmares, and that's that in the Toymaker's realm, science really is just a game. He's the master of his own reality, which means he can do almost anything he wants within it. Like when he completely removed the Doctor's mouth, as he tried to explain to Clara whose trap they'd set off in the comic book story Relative Dimensions. Or when he literally moved the Doctor's entire body bar his hand so that he could play Trilogic, but not communicate with his companions in any way to help them. The exact same is true for his ability to create matter in his own world as well. Just as he did with the Christmas card Krampus he created to pursue the Doctor and Clara, or the maze he created for Donna and David Tennant in the Giggle episode. When you meet the Toymaker in his own domain, it really is like facing off against a god, a malevolent force who wants nothing more than the joy of condemning you to an eternity of suffering, a being who yearns for his victims to become yet another toy among thousands of others until he eventually forgets you even exist, and you become nothing more than an ornament for his toy room. The Toymaker is one of the few villains that doesn't act in order to save his species or enact revenge. He isn't influenced by the whims of self-preservation or reproduction. The Toymaker lures you in and slowly, rulingly plays you like a puppet until inevitably you become one. And he does all of this not because he has to, but because he wants to. You're nothing more than a pawn in this grand game, and who knows, the game could already be in play. If you ever find yourself lost in an entrance of a great toy shop, with only the wiry smile of the Toymaker to greet you, you know that there is no hope. You've already lost. This is your new home for the small matter of eternity.